Welcome to another video that you voted for, featuring 5 reasons to play the Gunbreaker. Like always, the balancing in Final Fantasy XIV is super good, so you cannot do anything wrong by choosing a job that may not appear on the S tier spot of any tier list or that crushes its competition on the FFXIV charts. So always make a decision according to their personal preference or try them out all together. Nonetheless, when you're kinda interested about heavy damage numbers or breaking the FFXIV charts or even outperforming DPS jobs when they're not performing very well, the Gunbreaker is the top choice here and is considered as the highest DPS job among all tanks. Which of course leads to a very solid meta placement, and in speed raiding or FFXIV grinding, the Gunbreaker is an obvious choice and only the Paladin's versatility is a close follow on its footsteps. But as we're talking about a tanking team, Gunbreaker is seen in nearly every popular combination except Dark Knight plus Paladin, which is another very solid choice for many parties. Still, the Gunbreaker performs the best overall damage, and if that is a trait you're looking for while also holding up the tanking and damage mitigation spirit, nothing can lead into another direction. The second reason is it's a Final Fantasy classic. Yes, the Gunbreaker is one of the most unique job designs in the whole job roster, or at least it is a true Final Fantasy origin, being portrayed and idolized by many protagonist characters of the main series, with Squall and Lightning being the prime example for this. But the true hero and most remarkable feature of the Gunbreaker may be its weapon, which is the Gunblade. While I still don't know exactly how such a weapon works, it's super cool, and I always remember the times when releasing the trigger by another button press on each of Squall's attacks really created another level of gameplay, and Square really nailed it when they transfused that idea into an MMO environment. And when gathering some feedback about people's favorite tank, many people are heavily excited about the Gunbreaker because of the fast pace, the battle animations, and of course its true Final Fantasy origin. And indeed, this fast-paced combat stands in a close connection to the style of the Gunbreaker, as it can be seen as the action-heaviest and quickest tank you may play. And unlike the Dark Knight, you're able to recreate these action sequences more than every 90 or 120 seconds. But every time your cartridge rotation is cooled down, the fun and burst damage begins anew. And still, you're able to compete with most DPS jobs, as your opener is also dealing tons of damage in quick succession and without the need to build up your rotation for hours. Which of course leads to the same benefit we discussed on the Dark Knight already, that you're able to clear and destroy every form of world content, or that you're always prepared for killing enemies fast that don't have much HP at their disposal. And though the Gunbreaker may lack the very big cooldown windows, these intermediate cooldown windows are occurring much more frequently, and still the damage comes very close to a Dark Knight or Warrior smashing in everything into a 10 to 15 second phase. So your rotation highlights are repeated in much quicker sequences. Next up we got accessibility. Let us talk about the job design that I think creates the Gunbreaker as one of the easiest jobs around when it comes to getting started with it and learning the job from scratch. Because one of its main features is that you can easily interrupt combos without breaking them. Which means when you use Keen Edge for example, you can do whatever you want before using the comboed Brutal Shell, which would not be possible on most other jobs except the Machinist, so Square likes to attach this idea to jobs with a firearm style and background. Above that, the cartridge system is the most logical explanation of a resource mechanic that has ever been introduced in Final Fantasy XIV. And this really shows how much Square has refined their class design when they created the Shadowbringers jobs Gunbreaker and Dancer. Above that, when talking about accessibility, you can start Gunbreaker whenever you have reached level 60 with any job of your choice, without any other prerequisite than reaching level 60 and having bought the Shadowbringers expansion. And the biggest advantage compared to Heavensward jobs for example, your progress will not get cut off, as you can directly switch over from your first level 60 job to the Gunbreaker and continue with your recent level quests or MSQ. It is a really straightforward experience and the combat system is super rewarding. Last but not least, the real devil trigger. Yes, the Devil May Cry reference does fit very well here because in all of its expression, style or class design, the Gunbreaker screams the term power and destruction. And its aggressive nature is not only shown by its DPS lead in FFXIV, but all of its defensive cooldowns, paired up with the Aurora heal really producing the feel of not being on focus. All this really makes it feel like there is not a single resource not spent for causing damage to your enemies. And even if the Gunbreaker defensives may be imagined like a side effect, It's super effective and doesn't distract you from a DPS focus, so that you're more getting the impression to play a DPS job other than a tank. And the funny thing is, the defenses are not even weaker than the ones of the other tank. As far as I've heard, the Gunbreaker is actually very strong on solo content because of the passive healing nature of Aurora. So the Devil Trigger really shows by all the strong bursts coming out of the triggered cartridge rotation. And if Capcom would ever think to realize a Devil Trigger mechanic in an MMO environment, I guess the Gunbreaker would spot the best example for this. But of course, all this power, especially the straightforward access to it, brings with some disadvantages as well. And this time I feel like these disadvantages are more a personal thing than ever before. So if you're a big Gunbreaker fan, don't listen to this useless Dark Knight or Paladin fanboy and keep up the love for Gunblades. I don't know. But the easy accessibility could potentially have ruined it for me, as I really like complex jobs, not on the astrologian level, but something like the summoner. But it could easily be the forgiving combo interruption as well. That you're never being punished for hitting the wrong button, except for overstacking with cartridge stacks or not hitting your continuation follow-up attacks before using the next cartridge combo attack. And when doing dungeons, this gets even worse. And I actually never do dungeons as a Gunbreaker because of that simple 1-2-3 AoE combo, which you always use when having 3 or more targets. And apart from bow shock and your cooldowns, there's no other button that you press. I guess I would love to see something like the cartridge rotation as an AoE variant in Endwalker, because Fated Circle is super boring to use as resource consumer attack. But if you like it simple but useful, the Gunbreaker doesn't disappoint in dungeons, providing the strongest meme of all in the form of Super Belite. That directly leads us to the second downside, which is kind of the same as it is with the Dark Knight. Your oh shit button requires visiting a doctor, literally, as your self-purgatory redeem yourself from exterior influence and the life inherent to your body, aka nearly killing yourself and leaving just a small spark of 1 HP. That you're barely able to get healed by yourself. And above the meme itself, this can lead to heavy miscommunication in duty roulette or random group content to anger your healer, that just spent its benediction to heal you up, while you're more concerned about wasting your life and your healer's sympathy. But in the same way as for the Dark Knight, you can easily fix that issue with some communication, turning your Super Belite into a really strong tool, coming close to the value of the Paladin's hallowed ground. And like always, this story and job experience is created by your own story, so whatever path you may take, a Gunbreaker will always be there waiting. And if you get there, it will be waiting for you, I promise. So embrace the memes, cross them, and don't forget to tease your healers with the strongest weapon your party can fill into the blue slot, featuring the DPS among tanks, the Gunbreaker. Thank you for watching, and if you want to learn more about other jobs, check out my other videos or visit my Gunbreaker guides for further info about the super tanky DPS job. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep super belighting yourself into the heart of your local white mage.